That night, Zaire dreamed of a roar. Not of the wind, but of the sea in agony. On the rocky outcrop of Ila's watch, he saw her a mermaid with golden scales crying blood. Each drop that fell was a brilliant scale shattering on the black sand. "Forgive or punish?" she asked, then vanished into the thick mist. The next morning, the sea no longer sang. A stranger appeared by the shore, bearing eyes eerily reminiscent of Masego, but it was his son. Zaire choked. Naya stepped back, and Naima, their mother for the first time, trembled before the waves. The curse was not yet over. And this time, Ila was not merely the guardian of justice, she was the one who would test whether forgiveness was great enough to save this ocean. Once upon a time, in the African American community of the state, when the moon was no longer full, but shattered like a broken mirror, a strange night descended upon Joku village. No one understood why the sea roared in the middle of the night, despite the moon not yet being full. The villagers awoke in confusion. But Zaire, the young man who had once emerged from the ocean, now the sea's guardian, was not merely confused. His heart felt as if it were being stretched by an invisible force, something beyond the sound of the waves, deeper than the whisper of the wind. Zaire walked alone to the outcrop of Ila's watch, a place that had once been the meeting point between life and death in old memories. Under the fractured moonlight, he saw them tiny golden scales like dragonfly wings shattered and scattered across the wet sand. Each piece was like a call, broken yet shimmering. Those scales Zaire knew well belonged to Ila, the radiant mermaid who had once saved him and his sister from the abyss of darkness. But today, Ila did not sing. The sea did not whisper. It was unnaturally silent, as if the entire ocean were holding its breath. Meanwhile, Nia, the younger sister with an intuition born from the heart of the sea, dreamed a strange dream. She saw Ila sitting among the reefs, no longer swishing her golden tail, but merely gazing silently toward the south. Her eyes were heavy with sorrow, the sorrow of one who no longer believed in what she had once protected. Naima, their mother, upon seeing the golden scales, said nothing. She gently stroked each piece and tucked them into a woven cloth bag made from her own hair, then buried it beneath the ancestral tree. Her face was pensive, for she knew when the sea ceased to sing, it meant the ocean was issuing a warning. Zaire felt something stirring within him, an urge not from the sea, but from his very blood. He recalled the eyes of Masego, the cruel stepfather who had once cast them into the merciless waves. But what haunted him more was a land to the south, a place his mother had mentioned in a hushed voice as she lay dying, the place where Masego had bought charms and traded vows for power. No one in the village wished to speak of that land, a place deemed the Dead Sea because no fish dared venture there. But Ila's gaze in the dream, directed toward that place, was a sign that the darkness had not been buried. It was merely seeping into the depths of the water, biding its time to rise again. Nia began quietly carving her dream onto white seashells. She didn't know why she did it, only that each stroke on the shells was a way to keep the memory alive. And that night, for the first time in years, Zaire and Nia did not sleep side by side, each confronting a piece of the truth they had yet to name. At the edge of the horizon, where the sea met the sky, a faint light appeared. It was not the sun, nor a falling star, but the reflection of an object drifting closer to the shore. Was it Ila sending one final message? Or was she herself crying out for help from something the ocean could no longer conceal? The next day, when the mist still veiled the sea and the dawn's light had yet to reach the leaning palm trees on the sand, a silent figure appeared on the path leading into the village. He walked barefoot, tall in stature, with a broad forehead that seemed to embrace the entire horizon. On his back was a piece of indigo-dyed cloth from the south, stained as if bearing the remnants of unresolved curses. It was Kanu, the one who carried resentment from the south, whose eyes were unlike those of the Nujoku villagers, yet also unlike those of outsiders. His eyes were like oyster shells, long closed, cold, silent, and unnaturally bright under the pale sunlight. No one knew where he came from, but for Naima, fear pierced to her very bones. In the stillness of a dead sea, she recognized the man standing before her as the old dream she had tried to bury. Many years ago, when Masego left the village to learn dark charms, he had stayed in a marshland with an exiled priestess, a woman rumored to make black water froth with just a glance. The child born from that union was Kanu. His blood was a blend of the sea's light and the darkness of human hearts. Naima had never told Zaire and Nia about this, believing that if she remained silent long enough, the waves would erase all traces. But the ocean never forgets. And Kanu now returned came not as a vengeful figure, but as one claiming his right. He arrived with gentle words, a calm demeanor. He stirred no one. But Zaire, from the first moment he saw those eyes, felt something familiar and opposing. Like two waves moving in opposite directions, they understood each other the moment their gazes met, without a single word. Kanu had no need to win favor. The sea sided with him. Fish appeared where he cast his line. The water cooled where he laid his hand. The villagers began to whisper, "This one hears the voice of the water. Perhaps he is Ila's messenger returned." But Nia, the one who could still sense the dreams of the waves, felt a chill seeping into the air around Kanu. He showed no reverence when speaking Ila's name. In his gaze, there was no gratitude, only an unforgiven question. That evening, beneath the ancestral tree where Naima had buried the scales, she called Zaire and Nia to her side. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were bright. She told them everything about Masego, the woman from the south, the child born of a calamity that love could not redeem. "The blood of the sea always finds its way back to its source," she said. "But not every drop knows how to listen to the heartbeat of the water." Zaire said nothing, but in his heart he understood. A great wave was coming, and this time it did not roar, it whispered. And it was that silence that made it impossible to predict when it would sweep them away. Dear audience, take a moment to relax or sip a glass of water, then continue listening to the story. There are still surprising twists ahead. Comment the number 1 if you find the story intriguing, so we know you're still with us. The moon had not yet risen, but a strange golden light from the rocky shore illuminated the village like an ominous sign. Every villager felt it. It was not sunlight, but a kind of spiritual force. And then, from the horizon, she appeared Ila, more radiant than any appearance in the village's memory. The golden scales on her tail now glowed like fire burning within water. With each step she took, the waves parted behind her, leaving a dry path beneath her feet as if the ocean itself were bowing before a goddess. But today, she did not smile. She did not sing. The wind carried no flute-like melody, only a distant rhythm like war drums, urgently awakening the hearts of those still harboring darkness. Ila stood in the center of the village, where the ancestral altar once stood, looking directly at Naima, then Zaire, then Nia, and finally at Kanu. There was no blessing. Only a voice echoed from the sea, resonant and ancient as the ocean itself. A soul twisted by hatred can open the path for the sea to become an abyss. Kanu seeks the sea soul drum, the relic that maintains the rhythm of life between people and water. The villagers had never heard of such a name, but Naima knew. The sea soul drum was an object bestowed upon their ancestors by Ila hundreds of years ago to maintain the balance between the village and the ocean. If the drum fell into the hands of one bearing darkness, the sea would no longer be a protector. It would become a force that consumed everything with its cold, silent wrath. Ila turned away, not waiting for a response. But as she vanished into the waves, her eyes seemed to leave behind a question. What will you do when your own flesh and blood becomes a threat to the mother sea? Zaire and Nia understood. No one could save the village but them. They were the ones born from the sea, nurtured by love, and survivors of betrayal. But to confront Kanu, the one who shared half their blood, was not a matter of strength, but of faith. For the sea soul drum did not lie in the earth or at the bottom of the sea, but in the deepest place, within the shadows each person concealed. When the last glimmer of Ila's tail faded into the sea, Joku village fell into a strange silence. No one sang anymore. No one told stories around the fire at night. The name Sea Soul Drum was like a crack in their memory, vague but resonant. And in that void, Kanu entered like a breeze from the south, not aggressive, not loud, but deeply penetrating. He carried no knives, swords, or ostentatious charms. Kanu brought knowledge in ancient language no one remembered how to pronounce, and deep-sea rituals the villagers thought existed only in tales. He approached slowly, each step as if honoring the spirit of the Earth Mother, but beneath each step echoed the ambition left by his father. The villagers began to listen, for Kanu did not make empty promises. He showed them how to redirect water currents, taught them songs to call fish in the lean season, and with just a bowl of seawater and a root, he healed a man who had been dying for days. For the poor, gratitude easily turned into belief. Zaire watched from a distance. Each of Kanu's actions was like a thin cut across the memories of their father, Masego. He wanted to hate, but found himself drawn to a truth. Kanu was not deceitful. Everything he did was real, and sometimes truth was more terrifying than lies. Meanwhile, Nia saw something different. She did not feel Kanu as a threat, but as someone in pain. Whenever he walked alone, whenever he touched the water, his eyes were not proud but heavy, like a storm trapped in the heart of the sea. And once, when he stood before the ancestral statue by the rocks, she saw him cry silently, as if carrying the entire ocean in his eyes. One night, as the moon pierced through the clouds, Nia went to the shore where Kanu was performing a ritual with charcoal and salt. He was drawing strange symbols in the sand when he stopped upon seeing her. Neither spoke. But in that silence, Nia began to feel herself waver. She wondered, was justice in rejecting everything he represented, or in learning to listen to understand and forgive? Meanwhile, Zaire went alone to the ancestral tree where Naima had buried Ila's golden scales. He dug them up, not out of doubt, but out of fear. And beneath the damp earth, there were not only the golden scales, there was a piece of dried hide, inscribed with an ancient script, the symbols of the ritual to awaken the sea soul drum. Masego had left it, and perhaps Kanu had learned it. Zaire clutched the hide tightly in his hand. This was no longer a matter of faith. If Kanu performed that ritual and connected with the sea soul drum, he would become not just someone who spoke to the water, but someone who could command the soul of the ocean. But what frightened Zaire most was that in some deep part of himself, he felt that ritual calling his name. Not in words, but in feeling. An instinct as if the blood of Masego had never faded only lay dormant beneath the light he had built for himself. Zaire had never killed anyone, but he began to understand why some chose darkness, not because they wanted to, but because the light was not wide enough to embrace their wounds. If Kanu was not the enemy, then would Zaire dare to admit that the true enemy might lie within his own heart? As night fell, the sea was eerily still, as if holding its breath, awaiting what was to come. Then, from the calm waters, Ila arose, her golden scales blazing like a sun rising in the heart of the night. No longer a guardian deity, she now stood as the final messenger of truth. Her voice did not echo aloud, but pierced directly into the minds of each person. To protect the sea soul drum, you must journey to the depths of your own darkness. The emerald abyss, the deepest part of the ocean, from which no one returns unchanged, was opened. Ila did not force them to go, but none of the three refused. Kanu silently touched the forehead of his imagined mother. Nia closed her eyes, her hands clenched. Zaire took a deep breath, as if severing all ties to the past. They leapt from the weeping cliff, like three souls plunging into their own destinies. Beneath the silent green waters, the emerald abyss unfolded like a sacred, wordless realm. There, light came not from the sun, but from emotions. The truer they were, the more radiant. And then each was separated like opposing currents. Kanu fell into his mother's memories, the southern woman with weary eyes by the door. His grandfather had once said, "Those who sow seeds and abandon them leave behind a barren field full of thorns." He saw his mother scorned by the villagers, saw her kneeling to beg for food while pregnant. Kanu did not cry, but he felt something he had never felt before: shame. And for the first time he whispered, "Mother, I'm here." Zaire saw himself in a mirror, but it was not the Zaire of now. It was another Zaire, with eyes as cold as his father's hands, stained with the blood of the villagers. He screamed, but the sound echoed only within him. The darkness did not swallow him. It tempted him. And just as Zaire was about to surrender, a clear voice rang out Naima's from memory. "The light you choose is not chosen because it's easy, but because it's right." Zaire broke into tears. Nia stood between two streams of water, one white, one black. She was not pulled toward either, but she saw the faces of her loved ones, her mother, her brother, and Kanu. They called to her with both trust and pain. And then she stepped toward the black water, not because she chose darkness, but because she wanted to face it to understand. And in that moment, the black water turned a deep violet, sparkling with flecks of light like sea fireflies. Nia wept, her tears merging with the ocean. When the three returned to the heart of the abyss, there were no barriers left. They needed no words. For the sea soul drum, a glowing gem amidst the coral had begun to pulse. Not with sound, but with a rhythm, like the heartbeat of a human. Are you still here, my audience? Please comment the number 1 or "I'm still here" to keep listening to the story. The light from the sea soul drum still resonated as the three stood silently amidst the glowing coral. It was no longer a trial, but a cleansing. Wounds, memories, pain, all were laid bare, not to be erased, but to be seen. And in that sacred moment, it was Nia who stepped toward Kanu, not with caution, not with suspicion, but with arms open wide, like the sea embracing a shore once ravaged by storms. Nia said nothing. She only held Kanu tightly, as if embracing the abandoned part of herself. Kanu stood stunned. For years, he had envisioned revenge, had thought of the curse Ila had cast upon his father like a death sentence on his soul. But he had never imagined that what he would receive was acceptance. Kanu did not cry, but his hands trembled. And in that silent tremor, the sea soul drum blazed brightly, as if responding to something humans had yet to comprehend. Ela appeared amidst the water, not haughty like a goddess, but gentle like morning mist lingering on the sea before dawn. Her eyes glistened with tears, not from sorrow, but from witnessing the hardest of all miracles, true forgiveness. She did not judge. She only spoke, like a lullaby. Forgiveness is not about pardoning others, it is about freeing yourself from the blade of hatred. Her words fell softly, like a gentle wave, yet reached the deepest parts of the soul. Zaire looked at Kanu no longer as the bearer of a murderer's blood, but as a brother sharing the legacy of unhealed wounds. He nodded, not because he had forgotten, but because he had chosen not to let the past define the future. Kanu stepped toward the sea soul drum. No one stopped him. He placed his hand on the sacred gem, closed his eyes, and when he opened them, the light in his gaze had changed. It was no longer the hue of hatred, but of release. He gave a faint smile, neither bitter nor pained. Then, like a natural current, Kanu dissolved into the water, so lightly that no one knew where he had gone. Had he merged with the sea, or returned to the Mother Ocean's embrace? No one could say for certain. But when he vanished, the sea soul drum did not fall silent. It resounded a sound beyond naming, like the heartbeat from the ocean's core, like the wordless song of 1,000 lost souls now guided home. Njoku village did not rejoice. They only bowed their heads, as if they too had been purified. In that atmosphere, no one spoke of Masego. No one cursed the past. For what remained was the present, the lesson, the hope. Ela looked at the two children from years ago now, grown souls. She did not say goodbye. She only sank quietly into the water, her golden scales once more dissolving into the waves, leaving behind one final spark, then disappearing. And from then on, whenever the sea was calm, the villagers would say to one another, it was not because there were no waves, but because the sea was listening to the hearts of those brave enough to love, to hurt, and to forgive. How long would that peace last before a new wave arose? That morning, the sky was cloudless, but the sea breeze blew gently, as if the ocean itself were holding its breath for a farewell. Naima had passed quietly, tenderly, as she had lived. She closed her eyes in a deep sleep, lying on the hammock woven from seashells that Zaire had repaired the previous season. On her chest, her hand rested on a cloth embroidered with waves, the final trace of a life bound to the water, to love and to loss. The news of her passing spread through Njoku village like morning mist seeping into every thatched roof. But instead of cries, people walked lightly, spoke softly, and placed salt flowers around her home as if no one wanted to disturb her final serenity. The memorial was not just for Naima, but for all the souls who had chosen light amidst the darkness of life. Under the old salt tree, the villagers sat in a circle, singing the ancient songs Naima's mother had once sung, melodies not of mourning, but of returning. Ela came, like a wisp of vapor slipping through the mist. No one saw her arrive, only noticing that when the sunlight touched Naima's forehead, a shimmering droplet lingered. Ela placed her golden-scaled hand on Naima's heart, her eyes half closed, as if sharing the last warmth still lingering. In that moment, no one dared breathe heavily. Then she whispered not aloud, but everyone heard it in their hearts. The sea will always remember a mother who dared to love even pain. The sea soul drum, the sacred relic, was brought to the graveside ceremony. It was not struck, it did not resound, but everyone felt its music pulsing beneath the blue sky. After the farewell, Zaire and Nia stood side by side, saying nothing. Each held half of the sea soul, one for the land, one for the water. Zaire placed his half in a cave behind their mother's old house, where the waves could not reach but their sound could always be heard. Nia, meanwhile, swam to the depths of the sea, to where the emerald abyss rested, to place the other half where souls listen to the truth. Every beat of the drum thereafter rang out from those two halves, not at the same time, not in the same place, but always echoing to one another, like two hearts finding a shared call. Naima's heart, though it had stopped beating, lived on in those things: harmony, respect, and unconditional love. As night fell, Njoku village returned to peace, but in every heart, Naima's departure left an emptiness no one could fill, for she was not only the mother of two children, but the mother of the entire village, of every soul that had faced trials and returned to the light. And as the people resumed their daily lives, they did not know that on a distant southern cliff where Kanu had once dissolved into the sea, a light flickered beneath the water, like a breath that had not yet ended. When the season of calm seas arrived, not everyone noticed. The breeze blew gently like the first breath of morning. The waves lapped evenly without a trace of resentment. In that moment, Nyoku village prepared for a ritual that had become tradition after Naima's passing the seashell lantern ceremony. It was not for mourning, but for remembering. Not for holding on, but for letting go of memories, dreams, and even unpardoned mistakes. Zaire and Nia stood together by the shore, their hands clasped tightly. They were no longer children of tragedy, but guardians of the sea soul drum, tellers of truth through silence. Seashell lanterns were arranged along the beach, each containing a strand of hair, a piece of cloth, or a small note bearing the name of someone departed. As the sky turned purple, the entire village lit them in unison, releasing each one to drift out to sea, as if letting go of a part of themselves. Far on the horizon, as the first lantern touched the water, a shimmering figure appeared. No one spoke her name, but all eyes followed there was Ila, in her radiant golden scales, standing silently at the boundary between the mortal world and myth. She did not sing. She only smiled. A smile that promised nothing, but carried a peace that 1,000 songs could not express. Zaire felt the faint pulse of the sea soul drum resonating from the cave. Deep beneath the sea, Nia sensed its echo too. 2 beats, 2 silences, but bound by a single soul, as their mother had once said, "When you learn to forgive, you are no longer a victim of the darkness." From that night on, the lantern ceremony became the holiest ritual in Nyoku village. Each lantern was like a soul seeking light. And every year, people still saw Ila's silhouette return, not to intervene, but to witness. For she understood that this world did not need more miracles, but more hearts willing to listen to one another, to feel pain, and to let go. The story of Masego, Kanu, Naima, Zaire, and Nia was not merely a legend. It was a mirror reflecting a choice: to hold on or to release, to seek revenge or to forgive. The ocean took no sides, but the sea would always cradle those brave enough to return from the abyss. That night, as the last light dissolved into the waves, a question echoed in the hearts of those at the ceremony. Is there a soul out there, watching, waiting to be illuminated by a lantern yet to be released? Some stories never truly end. They simply continue quietly in the waves, in the wind, and in the silences between 2 heartbeats. In Nyoku village, as the last light from the seashell lanterns dissolved into the sea, no one spoke. but everyone felt something incomplete. A soul, perhaps, still lost between dreams and memories. A promise left unsaid. A connection yet to be mended. And she, Ela, returned each year in her radiant golden scales, not to remind, but to prove. Hearts that know forgiveness always have a place to return to. We have seen greed swallowed whole, seen darkness illuminated by understanding. But from the depths of the ocean, a new beat of the drum is stirring. Who is calling from a deeper abyss? Who is waiting for their own story to be retold in the voice of the waves? If this tale has left you speechless, please don't leave just yet. For the next part may hold the answer to what you carry in your heart. Leave a comment where are you watching from and which moment left you silent. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if you believe someone out there needs its healing. Are you ready to explore part 3, where old memories meet a new curse?